Hello Chanel Burrito Bank Jali give you any information about Ukraine troops raise flag over railway hub as advance threatens to turn into rout reported by CNBC.com, published Saturday, September 10, 20226, 32 am. Ukrainian officials shared photos on Saturday showing troops raising the nation's flag over the main railway city that has supplied Russian forces in northeastern Ukraine, as a collapse in Russia's frontline threatened to turn into a rout. A Reuters journalist inside a vast area recaptured in recent days by the advancing Ukrainian forces saw Ukrainian police patrolling towns and boxes of ammunition lying in heaps at positions abandoned by fleeing Russian soldiers. With Ukrainians now having reached the city of Kupiansk, where rail lines linking Russia to eastern Ukraine converge, the advance had penetrated all the way to Moscow's main logistics route, potentially trapping thousands of Russian troops. Natalia Popova, advisor to the head of the Kharkiv Regional Council, shared photos on Facebook of troops holding up a Ukrainian flag in front of Kupiansk City Hall. A Russian flag lay at their feet. Kupiansk is Ukraine. Glory to the armed forces of Ukraine, she wrote. In Rykov, one of dozens of recaptured villages, Reuters journalists saw burnt-out vehicles bearing the Z symbol of Russia's invasion, and piles of rubbish and ammunition in positions the Russians had abandoned in evident haste. Hello everyone, we are from Russia, was spray painted on a wall. 3 bodies lay in white body bags in a yard. The regional chief of police, Volodymyr Tymoshenko, said Ukrainian police had moved in the previous day, and had checked the identities of local residents who had lived under Russian occupation since the invasion's second day. The first function is to provide help that they need. The next job is to document the crimes committed by Russian invaders on the territories which they temporarily occupied. The capture of at least part of Kupiansk, if confirmed, potentially leaves thousands of Russian soldiers trapped at the front line and cut off from supplies. Reuters could not independently verify the situation in the city. Ukraine has seized a huge swathe of territory in the east in recent days in its fastest advance since it defeated the Russian assault on the capital Kyiv in March. In an overnight video address, President Volodymyr Zelensky said at least 30 settlements had been liberated in Kharkiv region. Our army, intelligence units and the security services are carrying out active engagements in several operational areas. They are doing so successfully, he said in a video address. Moscow has acknowledged that its frontline has buckled in Kharkiv but has said it is rushing extra troops to reinforce the area. The head of the Russian-installed administration in the province's occupied areas, Vitaly Gunchev, has described the advance as a Ukrainian victory and called for civilians to flee. Ukrainian officials have released a barrage of images of troops sweeping into previously Russian-held towns and being embraced by local residents who had been under Russian military occupation for 6 months. The Ukrainian advance threatens to encircle thousands of Russian troops in Izium, the main Russian stronghold and logistics base in the northeast sector of the front. Reuters was not able to immediately verify reports describing the situation in Izium. Gunchev, the Russian-installed regional official, included Izium among cities where he said civilians should evacuate. Ukraine's advance is by far its most rapid in months, after a long period in which the war had shifted into a relentless grind along entrenched front lines. Ukraine's attack in the east came as a surprise just a week after it announced the start of a long-awaited counterattack to reclaim Russian-occupied territory hundreds of kilometers away at the opposite end of the front in Kherson in the south. Less information has been made public about that operation, but Kiev has also claimed some successes there, cutting supply routes to thousands of Russian troops isolated on the west bank of the Dnipro River. We see success in Kherson now, we see some success in Kharkiv, and so that is very, very encouraging, U.S. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin told a news conference in Prague on Thursday. Tens of thousands of people have been killed, millions have been driven from their homes, and Russian forces have destroyed entire cities since launching what Moscow calls a special military operation to disarm Ukraine. Russia denies intentionally targeting civilians. Other news is Ukraine recaptures nearly 400 square miles of territory. Rebuilding Ukraine would cost estimated $349 billion, reported by Natasha, Turak and Amanda Macias from CNBC.com. Ukraine's counteroffensives in the country's south and northeast are gaining momentum, President Zelensky said, retaking territory and pressuring Russian troops. Ukrainian forces have recaptured 1,000 square kilometers, 386 square miles, of land, he said in his nightly address. Over the summer, Ukraine had said it would launch a counteroffensive to retake the southern city of Kherson, but had not mentioned any plans to counterattack in the northeastern Kharkiv region or elsewhere in the east. Analysts say Kiev could now be taking advantage of Russia's decision to redeploy troops to southern Ukraine. Russia's top lawmaker slammed the Group of Seven's plan for a price cap on Russian oil exports, saying it will only push prices higher and would turn their price ceiling into a floor. Istanbul, Turkiye, August 9, an aerial view of Glory, named empty grain ship as representatives of Russia, Ukraine, Turkey and the United Nations (UN) of the Joint Coordination Center (JCC) conduct inspection on vessel in Istanbul, Turkey on August 9, 2022. The UN, Russia, and Ukraine signed a deal on July 22 to reopen three Ukrainian ports, Odessa, Chernomorsk, and Yuzhny, for grain that has been stuck for months because of the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war, which is now in its sixth month. The organization overseeing the export of agricultural products from Ukraine said it has approved 6 vessels to leave the besieged country. The Joint Coordination Center, an initiative of Ukraine, Russia, the United Nations and Turkey, said that the vessels are carrying a total of 96,181 metric tons of grain and other food products. The ships are expected to depart Saturday and are destined for Spain, Italy, Greece, Libya and Turkey. Other news are trolls for hire in Philippines, the concealed political weapon used in a social media war. Reported by Derek A. Paulo from CNA Insider. The 4th of September 2022 6 a.m. trolling has become lucrative for more than a few Filipinos, and it went into high gear for this year's Philippine elections. The program Undercover Asia gained access to the shadowy networks spreading falsehoods for politicians. Manila, it is an easy job, she has done full-time since the pandemic. All she needs is a SIM card and she can work from home, or anywhere for that matter. Sharon, not her real name, does not know who her bosses or fellow workers are, however. She is not interested in knowing them either. Trolls for hire in Philippines, the concealed political weapon used in a social media war. Trolls for hire in Philippines, the concealed political weapon used in a social media war, reported by Derek A. Paulo from CNA. The 4th of September 2022 6 a.m. updated. The 4th of September 2022 6 a.m. trolling has become lucrative for more than a few Filipinos, and it went into high gear for this year's Philippine elections. The program Undercover Asia gained access to the shadowy networks spreading falsehoods for politicians. Online engagement has been crucial in reaching Filipino voters. Increasingly, however, social media in the Philippines has become a breeding ground for disinformation. Manila, it is an easy job, she has done full-time since the pandemic. All she needs is a SIM card and she can work from home, or anywhere for that matter. Sharon, not her real name, does not know who her bosses or fellow workers are, however. She is not interested in knowing them either. What's important is we get our paychecks, and we deliver on what they ask, she said. Her job mission, to spread lies to as many people as possible. Using fake profiles and various SIM cards, as a matter of fact, to infiltrate social media groups, she has a daily target of at least 150 shares. Sharon, who is in her early 30s, is a paid troll. She is part of a large troll army available for hire in the Philippines, where politicians have allegedly shelled out for manipulating political discourse and swaying public opinion. A troll in the Philippines can potentially earn anywhere between 30,000 to 100,000 pesos, 740 Singapore dollars to 2,480 Singapore dollars, a month, according to news reports in the country. That makes trolling financially lucrative compared with the average monthly wage rate, which was about 16,500 pesos across all monitored occupations and industries in 2020. And this is how politicians are weaponizing disinformation now, said the La Salle University professor of communication Jason Cabins. It's not just one camp, but many different political camps. Everyone seems to be in on it. They feel that they need to be part of this new political game. It is a social media war. And as it went into high gear for this year's Philippine elections, the program Undercover Asia gained access to these networks of disinformation, in a look at the unseen force behind the country's politics. The troll, according to a report by humanitarian organization Mercy Corps, political disinformation campaigns play out in 3 phases: the development of core narratives, onboarding of influencers and fake account operators, and dissemination and amplification on social media. In Sharon's case, she said she received instructions to promote a certain person on social media for the election season. Our leaders suggest joining groups that have more than 3,000 members. The ones we joined have 50,000 members, she said, citing the Facebook pages of overseas Filipino groups, for example, and the broken-hearted groups. To get as much engagement as possible, she targets their emotions. I reply sarcastically so they get more emotional when they respond, she said. That's our strategy. That's the better way to encourage more comments. Her job supports her family financially, but they do not exactly know what she does. They know that I'm busy commenting on social media, she said. But they don't know the real agenda of my work. 3 years ago, she was working in a hotel in Manila. And her introduction to the work of a paid troll came from a colleague who happened to be one herself. I'm still doing this job as it's helped me a lot financially, especially during the pandemic, said Sharon. The architect paid trolls are at the bottom of the money tree, however. Cabins estimates that most of the money, around 75 to 80%, remains in the pockets of the chief architects of network disinformation. These masterminds were identified in a 2018 report titled, Architects of Network Disinformation, Behind the Scenes of Troll Accounts and Fake News Production in the Philippines, which he co-authored. They're mostly ad and PR people. And some of them are former journalists, said Cabins. Through connections in the local media, Undercover Asia tracked down a chief architect, Rosa, who agreed to speak by phone on condition of anonymity. Usually, in our industry, and specifically for our team, there's no need for us to approach certain politicians, she said. It's the other way around. They need us more than we need them. She said she runs an independent public relations agency and had been hired by 2 candidates in the presidential elections. We implement national campaigns, usually parallel to their official operations, she said. We complement this and amplify this on social media. Perhaps it could involve artificial boosting of followers and content. We can also create pages in support of the person or groups. Her political clients prefer to pay in cash, using local currency, she said. A minor social media engagement, for a local client from a key city, could range from 300,000 to 500,000 pesos a month, while moderate operations for a national client could range from 800,000 to a million pesos a month. Asked if her political clients are aware that she hires people to spread disinformation to help them, she replied, exactly why they're hiring us. It is a growing international business, she noted. There are troll farms in China, in Russia, in Croatia, in the United States and the Philippines. Every country has its own share of keyboard armies. Denial of such would be a lie. The disinformation is amplified by digital influencers who are armed with unique skill sets. Their role is to kind of translate this conceptual strategy into actual posts, actual memes, comments that'll become viral. So that's their expertise, said Cabins. Take, for example, Brandon, who used to work in the television entertainment industry, where he sharpened his skills in content production. He said he was hired to create videos to boost a congressman's popularity among voters and hurt the rival candidate's credibility. No problem for me even if I'm called an online troll, as long as I'm getting paid, said the part-time influencer in his 30s. The employer he works for full-time, however, is unaware of what he does for additional income. Brandon used to produce travel and inspirational content on a Facebook page that he co-created with a friend in 2019. With 98,000 Facebook followers and 2,000 plus YouTube followers, they made some money from their non-political content, he said. But they realized they could earn more by creating and sharing disinformation. About 80% of their viewers were Filipinos aged about 29 and over, male and female, so the social media page became a medium for politicians targeting a local audience. What I'm doing is wrong, but during this pandemic, when everyone's in a time of need, I choose to support my family knowing that I'm not the only one doing this, said Brandon, the main breadwinner. Many people are doing this. Too many. He said he knew vloggers and YouTubers who were supporting their respective candidates by providing content just for money during the election season. Many politicians are indeed using them, he added. The former Facebook employee irregular behavior on social media does not go unnoticed, however. For example, a YouTube channel called Showbiz Fanatich built a following based on celebrity content but then switched to videos focused mainly on politics. We've seen that being used to basically bait audiences and grow the reach of YouTube channels, Facebook pages and so on, said Gemma Mendoza, one of the pioneers of news platform Rappler, where she spearheads efforts to address digital disinformation. Rappler's research has led her to conclude that politicians are buying and hijacking these social media pages for the purpose of pushing disinformation. One way to discern such manipulation on Facebook, for example, is to click on the Transparency tab of the page to see if a group has changed its name, she advised. Such groups were among a network of more than 400 Facebook accounts, pages, and groups that parent company Meta Platforms took down 33 days before polling day in order to tackle disinformation. A former employee based in Manila, who did not want his identity revealed, said that Facebook accounts should be authentic and that those reported as suspicious would be reviewed. Part of his job was to monitor and identify these accounts, and Andy cited some of the protocols for combating trolls. For example, the authentication process requires one's phone number and email address to be linked to one's Facebook account. And to counter trolls who buy multiple SIM cards and register multiple accounts using different phone numbers, Facebook users are identified by their Internet Protocol IP addresses to track where the accounts are created. If the IP address is the same but there is a new contact number, that account would be disabled, said Andy. Even without the system filters, he can spot trolls and inauthentic accounts, he added. They do not use their own pictures, for example, and there is no account activity other than comments. On presidential candidate Lenny Robredo's official Facebook page, Andy pointed out a commenter who only had 14 friends. Still, tech companies are struggling to keep pace with disinformation networks that are becoming more skilled in covering their tracks. What social media platforms are looking for is coordinated inauthentic behavior. But it's not coordinated because disinformation networks distribute the work to different people who don't necessarily know that they're working on the same project, said Cabins. It's these kinds of disinformation tactics that are well thought of that often evade regulations, and that's a real big concern. The law or lack thereof, there have been paid trolls in the Philippines as early as 2016. A year after his election, then President Rodrigo Duterte admitted to hiring trolls during the 2016 campaign period. Mercy Corps noted the use of Facebook, for example, to reinforce positive narratives about his campaign and to silence critics. Even with paid troll activity becoming more widespread since then, the Commission on Elections has not taken legal action, because there's no law that penalizes trolling in the Philippines, said James Jimenez, its current Director for Education and Information. Other than that, there's no easy way to identify these trolls, he said. A single person can have as many as 10 separate accounts, with 10 fully formed identities. And that'd be very difficult by itself to police. Candidates have to declare their campaign spending, but this has not proven effective in exposing the hiring of paid trolls. We imagine the use of money for disinformation would be drastically underreported, if reported at all, said Jimenez. While, technically, there are very few laws that penalize it, everyone knows that it's bad. And no one would cop to it. He believes the government must step up with new laws. He added, law enforcement has to be abreast of new technologies as well, especially since enforcement has a very technical component. The troll hunt is for the moment, however, investigative journalists in the country are the ones hunting trolls. We noticed as early as November last year that there seemed to be something off with some of the trending hashtags in relation to Ferdinand Bong Bong Marcos Jr., said Don Kevin Hapal, who leads Rappler's digital forensics team. The hashtags that were specifically promoting Marcos Jr. and attacking critics were mostly created around October, around the same time, which was extremely suspicious. Another group of journalists, who founded non-profit news organization Vera Files, has also been monitoring disinformation campaigns since last year. They found that Marcos Jr. benefited the most from election-related disinformation, said Vera Files online verification team head Celine Sampson. He benefited a lot from disinformation about his father's accomplishments or that all the ill-gotten wealth cases against the Marcos family have been dismissed. Vera Files also noticed that Robredo became the biggest target of disinformation over the months of campaigning. A lot of fake quote cards were attributed to Robredo, made to look like she's incompetent or she makes nonsensical statements, cited Sampson. On YouTube channel Showbiz Fanatic, there were videos accusing Robredo of being behind a petition to prevent Marcos Jr. from running, as well as a video claiming that hackers were planning to commit electoral fraud against him. To help fight against such disinformation, sec.ph, a 3-year-old pioneer in fact-checking, an initiative of 34 partners from academia, media and civil society organizations, was revived in January for this year's elections. There was a lot of disinformation to make candidates look like they were disqualified, or that there was massive cheating going on, observed sec.ph coordinator Rachel Khan. To provide the public with verified, up-to-date information, the group uploaded fact-checked content on its website. Members of the public who detected any piece of disinformation could also inform the group to get it fact-checked. The cost the war against paid trolls comes at a price, however, for journalists like Hapal. Whenever we publish stories that expose disinformation, those networks would fight back, he said, citing messages he has received from strangers who were making fun of my photos or calling me a paid journalist or other derogatory remarks. I was not only flooded with these threats and attacks via private messages, but they were also posting my photos everywhere. The disinformation networks had been coordinating their attacks for more than a year before the elections, according to Khan. It's been more of a long-term effort to mislead people. While the allegations of disinformation marred the election campaigns, there is no data that proves falsehoods influenced the outcome of the presidential election directly. On May 25, the Philippine Congress declared Marcos Jr. to be the winner with 31.6 million votes, or nearly 59% of the total vote. That was more than double the number of votes for his closest rival, Robredo. His camp declined requests for an interview with Undercover Asia. He has, however, publicly denied using trolls in his campaign. In a post-victory event, he made a mock admission of guilt as seen in a YouTube video. But there has been no other evidence that he had hired a troll army. What remains apparent to Rapolas Mendoza is that no matter which politician, online disinformation threatens democracy and weakens confidence in public institutions. Democracy thrives in a space where, first of all, you have to agree on the facts and then you debate. And there needs to be, at some point, a consensus, she said. Right now, what's happening is people are being driven into tribes in echo chambers, so there's no room for debate and consensus. It all becomes, I'm right, and you're wrong. That isn't conducive for democracy. Thank you for your attention and don't forget like and subscribe.